things on time. So we're gonna go on to our next talk, and I am gonna introduce Julian. Give me a second. Let's just give one more minute for people to be here.
Julian, what is your this part?
I don't know, I think it's just awesomeness.
Okay, so Julian Cheal, is it? Cheal. Okay, so he's a British Ruby Rails developer with a penchant for tweed fine coffee and home brewing. When not working for clients, he helped organize fun events around the world that teach people to program flying robots. And he also occasionally speaks at international conferences on the intersection of programming and robotics, which is, I think, what he's going to do now. So let's give him a warm applause to welcome him.
Hey everybody. Hola. Me llamo Julian. I live in Bath. Just so you're not confused, I don't live in London. So this is London. I don't live there. I live here in Bath. It's so named Bath as we've got lots and lots of baths. And if you do come to visit, we also now have got showers as of the last couple of years. So we cater for everyone. So I work for a small open source company called Red Hat. Don't know if any of you have ever heard of us or used this, but they're pretty cool. And at Red Hat I work on a project called Manage IQ. What that does is I manage clouds. So I see today there's a few clouds outside, so that's good, so I can help manage them. So this is my second time here in Mexico, and I absolutely love it here. And I love it so much that actually last night I got married, and so I'm not sure where my dear husband is, but we're soon going to be moving to Colima. So, but there's so many great things about Mexico. One of the things I love is the weather. It's just so hot like Mexico. It's amazing. I also really love the food. Tacos are my favorite animal, and they're just so tasty. The other thing that you like here in Mexico is celebrations and partying. And I love that you have a day, Dia de Muertos, where everybody gets to dress up as if they are in a Tim Burton movie. It's such a great idea. I love it. There is a couple of things that I don't understand. I really don't understand why you have a whole day to celebrate mayonnaise. It's like you all just go out and party, and I just don't get it. But I think it might be like the American celebration, Cinco de Cuatro. Is that what it is? Okay, sorry, back to my talk. So this is called It's More Fun to Compute. This is actually an album cover from a German synth band called Kraftwerk, which is where the title of this talk comes from. So today we're going to talk about synths. Unfortunately not these kind from Fallout 4, but these kind. So what are synthesizers? Well, they're basically made... Oh, that's what the ones I have. Yeah, so let's skip this bit first. So I brought with me a small selection of synthesizers. I have this one here with many cables. It's from Pittsburgh Modular. I also have a Chord Volca keys, Chord Volca bass, so there's a bit of a pattern here, and a Chord Volca beats. These are all completely analog synthesizers. So inside all of these are things called oscillators. And what are oscillators, you may ask? Well, they're things that oscillate. And those oscillations make what's called waves. And there are different types of waves that we can create with these instruments. There are square waves, which you may recognize from programming as like your typical on and off kind of binary type system. There are sine waves as well, which are, one would, even though these are all analog, one would think of these as the more analog wave, because we normally would represent them between like values like 0 and 127 when we're trying to sort of do hardware computing. They also can create these pretty nice looking ones called triangle waves. And one of my favorites, saw waves. And the cool thing is with saw waves, they can go this way or they can go that way. And the way you do that is you just copy this slide and flip it around the other way. And you magically just made a new wave. And speaking of Dia de la Muerta, is that how you say it, Day of the Dead? I would like to take a second to remember good old Google Wave, how we loved you. And one of my favourite ways actually is noise. If any of you were born before the 90s, you remember this is what your television would look like before the channel station switched on, or if you had the really old television, you had to wind the knob to find the signal. This is what that is there. Right, so enough talking. Let's have a demo to see what these waves sound like. So let's start this running. So I'm just, we'll explain how more of this works after, but we're just using Sonic Pi to talk to my synthesizer. And if I run this, oh, hang on, I have a surprise app. Right. So in order for you to actually see the waves, I've got a application written in Ruby using something called Ruby processing. So what this is actually doing is displaying the current wave that we're generating. So if I turn the volume up, see it's a wave. So this one is what's called a blade wave. This is a proprietary wave for this company. But if we change this to this is a sine wave. As you can see, it kind of looks like the picture that we had earlier. Or we've got a triangle wave. So you can see they've all got slightly different sounds and different shapes. Then a pulse wave. This should be more square-like, but we're not actually sampling the data enough in order to get a complete wave. And then saw wave, my favourite. And for those of you who weren't born in the 90s, this is what noise sounds like. But the cool thing is with these waves is that we can actually affect them. So if we adjust the width, oh, second one, let's run this again. So we can actually kind of oscillate the wave itself and make a different sound. So as you can see, you can see it's wobbling there, and the sound is getting more fuller. So this is just the same sound, but we're just affecting it by adding more waves to it. I think that's kind of pretty cool. Right. So those are the different shapes of waves. Right. So the next thing you do, so you can create all of your different waves now. The next thing you want to do is use an envelope. So we have different envelopes. We've got attack, decay, sustain, and release. And I know what you're thinking, this is some kind of pretty sweet fighting move. But what it actually does is it describes the way that the wave is going to be created. So attack is the amount of time that the sound goes from 0 to the highest possible value that it will be. Decay is the time it takes from the highest value to the kind of the base level of the sound. Sustains and odd ones, it's not a time, it's the actual volume of the sound. And release is the amount of time. Say for instance, if you press a key on a piano, the release is the amount of time the note keeps playing after you've taken your finger off. So we should be able to affect the waves by using the envelope generator. So move this over here. So in order to do that, I've just got just a little scale that we're going to play. So the other thing you'll notice, as the scale goes up, the waves on the screen are actually increasing. That's because the higher the note, the higher the frequency, which means there's more waves in a small space. So if I turn off the envelope, you'll hear that there's no sound. That's because all of those values are set to 0. So if we add a tiny bit of attack and decay, you can see that the sound is kind of a bit more staccato. And that's just because we're decreasing the time that it takes in every stage. But then you can start increasing them, and it's a bit more lethargic. So that's pretty cool. Right. So, you're thinking, excellent, so I just need to now go out and spend a few dollars on some hardware. And that is true, you could go out and buy some hardware, but the great thing is, we're all software developers, and there's a great piece of software called Sonic Pi, or as I prefer, Sonic Pi. And Sonic Pi is written by a British chap, and it uses Ruby to speak to something called Super Collider, which is basically a software synthesizer. And so, what we can do is generate our own music using Sonic Pi. So, just now I was just editing the wave using like the physical knobs on here to change the attack, sustain, and release. But this is how you would do it in Ruby. So you can see it's saying use a sawtooth wave, play 60. So that's the note value, I believe it's middle C. And then have the attack at that speed, at that time, decay, and blah, 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 blah. So let's see what that sounds like in Sonic Pi. Let's close that. Close that. Let's make this bigger. Right. Is that correct? Oh, no, that's not working. Let's try again. So that was the same sound from Sonic Pi, which sounds pretty similar to the note that we're making with my synthesizer. So we can change the attack. Instead of being short, we can make it a long attack. And that's pretty cool. And so basically, with that little bit of information, we can go off and go and create our own songs. The observant of you may notice that Sonic Pi now has its own oscilloscope visualizer, so you don't have to go and write your own anymore, so one comes built in. So, let's see what's next. I did that. Right, okay. So, we can write some Ruby code in Sonic Pi. I can play my instruments by myself. But we're software engineers. Wouldn't it be really cool if we could get the computer and use Ruby to write code to make the machines make sound? And it turns out we can. So there's something called MIDI, which stands for Musical Digital Interface. But before we talk about MIDI, I just want to talk about this lady. She is one of the pioneers of analog synthesis. She made some of the best albums, and you should recognize some of her music. Her first album was called Switched on Bach, where she basically recreated classical music using synthesizers. She also created the music for Clockwork Orange and Tron. So there's a fun fact. Anyway, so back to MIDI. Some of you may remember MIDI as being the files you would download to put on your mobile phone, and they tended to sound pretty bad.
Can I get a phone that plays the Mexican head dance?
I insist on it.
I dance, around the Mexican head. I dance, and that's the end of that. Or is it I guess I'll be singing? The phone appears to be ringing.
But, so MIDI doesn't actually make any sound. MIDI is just a protocol for sending information to instruments. And so the way it does that is you have the first part of the data sends which instrument, which channel you want to send it to. The middle part is the actual note, so if you can imagine the notes in the piano. And then the last bit is the velocity, so in other words, how hard you want the note pressed, which increases the volume. Oh, spoilers. So, I was thinking, I'm here in Mexico, I wondered what kind of music, what kind of music you have here in Mexico that maybe we could recreate with my synthesizers. And I found one of your most famous mariachi players, and so I was like, oh, cool. So I don't really know what mariachi music is, so I did a bit of Googling, and it turns out it's actually dance music. So I didn't realize that for hundreds of years, Mexicans actually were making dance music, which I thought was pretty cool. So, muy bien. If you've not seen this video, you should go check it out. It's pretty cool. Right, so, with that in mind, let's see if we can create our own mariachi music. Right, okay. So for that, I've got MIDI files in Ableton Live. Let's just change, which is a software application for running MIDI files. Switching cables. Okay, let's see if this works. Take that, dead Max. Okay, right. Aha, that's right, I have a list. Okay, so, the other cool thing, as I said, is you can actually write songs in Sonic Pi. So I was using here, Ableton Live is quite an expensive piece of software, but Sonic Pi is free. So in a few versions' time, there's going to be MIDI support built into Sonic Pi, but until then, I've kind of built my own kind of janky version that uses DRB Ruby. So the cool thing is we can, what I've done is I've written a gem that takes MIDI data from Sonic Pi and then sends that to my instruments. So hopefully, if this works, this should play a song, which you may or may not recognize. So this is all just written in Ruby using nothing really more than loops and knowing what notes that you want to play. But of course it's coming through real instruments, which is really fun. Then you can just stop it. So that's kind of cool. But if you're not into like graphical user interfaces like Sonic Pi, there is actually a Ruby gem that you can use in the terminal. So let's get a code. So it's called Diamond. It's a arpeggiator that is written in Ruby. And the arpeggiator is basically you take the notes of a chord and you just play them one after another. So let's require that. Let's turn this on. Yeah. So what we're doing here is actually now I've generated a setup file which just connects to my 3 instruments, and then we're basically going to just change what notes they're playing. Don't know how you can see the screen. It's a bit light, isn't it? So I've got 2 arpeggiators. So for the first one, we can add another note. Let's say the 3rd F. How about a D? Oh yes, we need to add the first one to the clock as well. So this is really fun. So you can be in a club trying to remember how to Ruby on the command line without making any typos in the IRB. Yeah. Oh. Let's get rid of that so you can just remove that note. Let's just stop it altogether. So that's kind of cool. So I'm not very good yet at actually coding in IRB, but hopefully maybe one day. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could like set this up to do it via like Tmux or something, and just be playing it in your home office or something, and then having everyone at home kind of dancing out to your tunes while you're pretending to work. I thought that was pretty cool. Right, so I've basically been playing enough. I think we should get some volunteers. Can I have 2 wonderful volunteers, please? You don't have to be wonderful, but I just like 2 volunteers. Yay! Round of applause. So what I have here are 2 Wiimotes. So if you have this one, if you want to go stand in the middle of the stage, because you're going to be center screen. My dear man. Right. Right. So what we have here, I have a bit of software that is talking to the Wiimotes, and then that is talking to my Ruby app, which is then talking to my synthesizers, so hopefully by the power of maths, our 2 fine gentlemen here should be able to make some sounds. So, if, who's Wiimote number 1? Do you want to, so if you press A and B, and then I think you can also press the 2 buttons at the front of the, and then player 2, if you can do, thank you. Player 2, you can also do A and B, and then you can do the bottom button on the nunchuck. Okay, right, so if you 2 play those in a second, I'm going to come back over to here, to Ableton Live, and I'm going to do it the easy way. Right, okay. Right. So, whenever you're ready to start, I'll turn the volume up in a second. Thank you. Okay, right. Last segment. So, in keeping with the tradition of this conference, if you remember all the way back to Wednesday, I think, we started hearing about, as I kept reading it, prehistoric history, but it turns out it means pre-Hispanic. Yay, dyslexia. So, pre-Hispanic history, we learned about that, and we had some amazing Aztec dancers. And they had some great tunes as well. So I was thinking, I wonder if, as today is the last day of MagmaConf, where we're all about modern Mexico, if we could kind of combine modern music with ancient Aztec dancing. So it just so happened, I have a video of the dancers. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind hearing my rendition of a traditional Mexican dance. And if I offend anyone, I'm sorry. I'm sure you mean it. You should just tell me later. Okay. This is what happens when you take all those mushrooms. Gracias.
That was pretty impressive, I guess.
Only pretty impressive?
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. Okay, so I don't know if some of you have questions for him. Yes, on the back. We have two people there and one on the front.
Do you have a playlist like on YouTube or SoundCloud?
Sorry, I can't see where you are. Ah, hola. What was the question?
And do you have a playlist on SoundCloud or YouTube? Make a research.
Yeah, so I've got like one song on SoundCloud at the minute, but I'm planning to put more on. I've got the track on my laptop, if you want to hear it later, but it's something I definitely need to do more of. Yes.
Hello. First of all, impressive, awesome talk.
Gracias.
I think that there are a lot of people that will like to, will want to leave their jobs and do what you're doing. But the big question is, how do you make money with that? It's super awesome, but it's like an awesome hobby from my perspective, but can you actually make money out of that?
No, just for fun. Well, I get to come to places like MagmaLabs to play on my instrument, so... Yeah, so it was originally founded, so Sam Aaron works at Cambridge University, and it was founded by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So it runs, it's a Ruby application that has a GUI written in TCK or TRK, whatever it's called. And the design principles behind Sonic Pi is if a 10-year-old can't do it, then it's too complicated. So go check out Sonic Pi, they've got great tutorials, and you'll learn about threading and variables. And you know how everyone says threading is hard? Well, if 10-year-olds can do it, then surely we can do it. No, it does not. It runs on the Mac, Windows, Raspberry Pi.
I think we had another question. Yes.
You were playing with Diamond through your like fancy synths and whatnot. Can we do all the same thing in software and just play it through our computers, or do we need?
Yeah. So because Diamond and my code that I was using in Sonic Pi and obviously Ableton Live, all of that just creates MIDI notes. So if you've got a software synth on your laptop, then you can do the same sort of thing. So actually a few people have done talks in the past where they've just used software synths on their computers.
Okay. Great. Anyone else? Awesome. So I will say he deserves another round of applause.
Well done. Thank you.